This painting of an old newspaper takes me back to a studio I had in Victoria Square. I had to move into the front rooms when the back part was demolished, and I stripped the walls before putting wallboard up and having it done up as a decent studio. And then behind the old match lining I found a crumpled newspaper, and I opened it up very carefully, and this is what I found: the old Littleton Times of an ancient vintage. And I thought, that's a delicate object, it needs painting. So I set it up and painted very carefully and meticulously, and the title I gave it was Feather Stoles for Sale, because there is the advertisement for feather stoles there. I thought that summed up the period quite well. I haven't seen a feather stole for 1,000 years. And I originally had the background painted a bright gingerish colour, and it didn't suit, so a year or two later I painted a faded mauve instead, as being more symbolic of the period to which the painting belonged. I suppose it's the most realistic piece of painting I've done, because one likes to push one's barriers aside in every direction possible, to become as realistic as possible, to become as divorced from reality as possible on every stage in between, so that you discover your compass when you finally settle into some sort of ritual of painting. But I believe in experimenting widely, and this is prized by me on account of its having pushed realism to its ultimate as far as I am capable of. This curious crag here caught my attention for years as a fascinating object, and so I thought I'd do a series on it, get it out of my system. And I produced, I think, 10 paintings of this size, dealing with it in as close-ups from various points of view and in different sorts of weather. It's the translation of the Maori name means the citadel of the rainbow god. I went to Roger Duff at the museum, having come across the Maori name for it, and he obliged with the translation. So I stuck to the Maori idea. The theory being that when clouds swept up Littleton Harbour, it poured over the top of that crag and made a mysterious object of it. And it's got a rhythm and a set of shapes rather like a hollow tooth, a molar, that turns in space. And I tried to get some feeling of that energy, residual volcanic energy that is a feature of many of the mountains in the peninsula, worn away with the harder rock showing through the tops of various parts of it. There's Mount Bosu and the monument and other things, and of course on this side here we have other portions of that upthrust of hard rock through a fumarole. But I got it out of my system, and I still admire it as a mountain, but I don't want to paint it anymore. They're finished with it. Once you're finished with something, away you go. You get off into something else. When you go around the country and have a look at them all, the infinite variety of patterns that the trees make according to the lie of the land they're planted in, the productivity of the ground, and even the nature of the trees they put in. Sometimes they plant them, fast-growing ones in belts around the perimeter, and slower-growing ones in the centre, if they're used for special occasions. But on this particular one we're looking at now, it was the bands of trees irregularly planted that attracted me. They made quite a brilliant pattern across the hillsides instead of a really solid block. Then of course a fire could go through part of it, as has happened on Worsley Spur, and that adds another touch of grandeur to it. If a fire were to take the whole lot, I think it would be a splendid arrangement. And it's easy in this case, with the one we're looking at now, to relate the tree forms to the sky forms. One set is nearly vertical and the other set is nearly horizontal. So the organisation of the landscape becomes almost a regulation thing and quite easily handled. But you can't do it too often. It becomes repetitive. One has to look for new material among the plantations, and especially the solid blocks, perhaps with thin lines of roads cutting through at different angles. One or two of mine have dealt with that. And then solid slabs of forestry sitting in the plains. These great dark areas can be adjusted and readjusted to work on the canvas surface. That Plantation Series 1 is quite a simple composition. For a start, I divided it into threes along each side. And then I set the short side down along the long side. So that comes down to there. And I erected a perpendicular on that, giving us the side of the forest. The horizon runs through there, that top third, and from that third there, I then set off a line up to this top third here, giving me the side of that plantation. Then from here, this third here, that's a bit better. I drew a diagonal from there to the corner and used the lower part of it to define the edge of that plantation, so that the contents of the canvas belong to the shape of the canvas itself. It isn't just an arbitrary arrangement. If you take half an inch off anywhere, you destroy it. It's like leaving the last chord off a piece of music. It's incomplete. So there's the basis, a simple basis for the structure of a painting. Every part belongs to every other part mathematically. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. How's that?